This is it. All right. Everyone, I want to introduce Elonka Dunin, former president of the Master 2600, world famous code breaker, and been to all the continents. I mentioned this yesterday as well. And just a really great friend to this con. We have her books on sale here after the talk. She will autograph those. The proceeds of those books go to the con. And
100%, 100% goes to the con.
And so, yeah, I think we have about 16 left. We'd love to sell those. And thank you. Thanks so much. Come in.
Sure. Alrighty.
Do you need a clicker?
Nope, I'm here. I'm
Okay.
good.
All right.
And does the mouse work? Yes. Okay, so, oh, it's here now. Hello. Hi there. Okay, so this is about a paper that 3 of us are writing. I'm the only person that's here. Taylor is actually in Japan right now, and Klaus is the co-author of my book. He's in Germany. So I am Elonka, as let's see, Ben was saying. Okay, good. Do I need to move? No? Okay, good. And this is the book, the 4th book I've written, 2nd book he and I wrote together. It took us 6 years to get this book. Wow, it was crazy. But it weighs 2 pounds, so it's a hassle to get through the airport. So please buy books, and you get an autograph for free. All right, so encrypted newspaper ads. So these were super popular in the 19th century, in the 1800s. And if you look through all kinds of newspapers, from the London The Times, through the French newspaper Le Figaro, Daily Chronicle, Morning Chronicle, all those, you'll find all kinds of ads. Now the British ads, you can find most of them in a book by Jean Palmer, which is a pseudonym for Tony Gaffney, and it has about 1,000 of these ads. The solutions are provided for many, but not all. And these are a couple ads that he lists. This is in the Evening Standard. On the right, you'll see that at the bottom, this is in clear text. It says, "This will be intelligible if read in connection with my communication published in this column on the 8th inst." Now, inst was a term that was used that meant this month. So we went back and we looked at the May 8th edition and didn't find anything that made it more intelligible. We did some, and it suggests that there's some sort of a transposition cipher going on here, but to date, this one is unsolved, if anyone wants to try and pounce on it. There's also these Bible code, it looks like a Bible code, also unsolved. And these two, clearly a communication between Tissy and Jabber. So, hey Tissy, Dano, Dono, whatever, Jabber, and hey Jabber, Nado, Dita, Nano, whatever, Tissy. These two also remain unsolved. Now, one of our colleagues in Switzerland, this is Didier Müller, he decided to look through the French newspaper Le Figaro, and he found many ads. Many have been solved. There are many that remain unsolved. So Klaus and I actually visited Didier just a few months ago when I was in Europe, and so Klaus came down, and we went around and just had a lovely time. And this is what Didier's database looks like. So on the left, you've got the text, the ciphertext as it appears in the newspaper. And on the right, he has the table, the decryption table. And in the middle, he has what the resulted message says, right? And so far he has collected over 3,700 messages, all in French, all from the French newspaper Le Figaro. And this is all from the time period, 1875 to 1896. 62% have been broken, so there are still many that remain to be solved. So I'll show you some of the unsolved ones, right? And, yeah, well, how many people here speak French? Anybody? Yep, okay. So yeah, you can solve it. No, I speak French, can't solve it. No idea, unsolved. And this one was interesting because if you look at it, and for a while, you can see that there's what's called clear text showing through. Hier, vous, suis, oble, mais, mon, and n'a pas. And then in between those clear text bits, you have 5-digit number, 5-digit number, 5-digit number, which really implies that there's some sort of a code book code going on here. It's unsolved as yet because we don't know which code book was used. We've looked at the code books that were available around that time period in both English and French, but we don't know. It's probable that this is something that involves a super encryption. So they took a code book code and then added one or multiplied the final digit by 2 or something, we don't know. So there, and let's see, we may just haven't found the correct code book. This one is a musical mystery, which I just love. I'll read it in French. Ce qu'on ne peut se dire ni s'écrire, on peut le chanter. Do, mi, do, mi, do, ré, fa, ré, mi, etc., etc. Vous avez compris? Which in English says, that which cannot be said nor written can be sung. And then musical notes, and have you understood? So, interesting. And we took the notes, Klaus and I, and we didn't know what key signature, and we didn't know how the length of the notes or anything, but we put it in there and made a good guess. And it sounds like, cover your ears, this should be good, right? Okay, right. And 10, thank you. Okay. And I'm going to play it one more time so you can kind of follow along with it. Okay, so what is this? We don't know. Now, there was a musical language called Solresol, which is an artificial language that was designed by a Frenchman, and it was based on musical notes. You'd use certain notes and they would mean something or the other. So I wanted to find someone who spoke or understood Solresol. So where do you go? Well, I went on Discord and I searched around and I found a Solresol group. And I asked them, does this make any sense to you? Is it, hey, I love you, why haven't you written back to me? And they listened and they said, no, it didn't make any sense to them. So another of my fans who manages a choir, she said that it sounded to her like the kind of notes that would be sung in a warm-up for a choir. They're going through and they're just kind of getting the notes going. So maybe all it means is see you at choir practice next week. So maybe it isn't a code, maybe it's just some sort of an inference there. Right. But for now, we list it as unsolved. And there are many more encrypted ads in English and in French. Most are published in the late 19th century, and most are broken, but some are not. So more research here is definitely necessary. So during this time period, there was in the London Times, if you went to the Times, around the first of the month, you would find these encrypted ads every month for 50 months. Here's one without the blurriness. And they tended to start with this S, so Slimpy, and they would have these different kind of 4-letter groups and 3-letter groups, and then these capital letters, and they would be signed with 2 or 3 capital letters. And so this was all between 1850 and 1855, and then they stopped. Yes, question?
How did people solicit having these ads, especially the ones with the strange characters and numbers? Did they have to write out on a piece of paper and then give it to be published? Because it used to be you would phone up and you would tell them what you wanted, and they would just type it in and recite it back to you.
I don't know exactly, but I think it was sort of like a telegram where they would write out what they wanted and they would hand it to the newspaper. And then when they saw it back, I think they would often go and write it out again and send it back, especially because you get typos everywhere. You write a business letter and you think, how many typos are you going to get in that business letter? And something that's encrypted, it's going to be even more difficult to make sure that you're getting it exactly right. And the price then, it wasn't that bad. It was kind of comparable with what you get for writing a classified ad today. So now we're going to fast forward. So we know that we have these encrypted ads from 1850 to 1855. We don't know what they mean. Now we're going to fast forward to 1980, all right? And the Times republished one of these ads in 1950 saying, hey, there's this group of ads, can anyone decrypt them? And they challenged their readers to solve it. None of them solved it, but one of them wrote in with a theory pointing out that there was this latitude and longitude at the bottom of the ad. And where did that latitude and longitude point to? Well, it pointed to this area north of Canada, and they suspected that because of the time period, it had a relationship to the Lost Franklin expedition. So, what is the Lost Franklin expedition? Right? This was one of the great mysteries of the late 1800s. What happened to Franklin and expedition? So, the British at that time were very interested in seeing if they could find the Northwest Passage. If you've heard of the Northwest Passage, it's how can you get to like Japan, or how can you get to the western side of the continent by going north instead of having to go all the way south and around the Horn of South America. So Franklin went, and he started in 1845, and he had two ships, the Terror and the Erebus, and looking for the Northwest Passage, and that's what they were doing. However, they left England, went across the ocean, stopped off briefly in Greenland to get supplies and offload a couple of sailors who had become ill, and then they went across Baffin Bay and disappeared. Now, we knew that they weren't going to be sending back expeditions on a daily basis, and they had the Terror and Erebus because they were warships, and warships were thought to be strong enough to withstand the ice. So the ships would like go as far as they could, and then in the winter the ice would come in and it would freeze the ship solid, and so the crew would stay there for a while until the ice thawed, and then they'd go a little further, and then they'd get frozen in again. One ship actually withstood this for 4 years. They thought the ship was lost, but 4 years later it finally came out. So, but Franklin, they were kind of expecting him to at least like leave messages here and there saying, this is where we are, this is how we're doing. But there was nothing at all. So after a couple of years, Lady Franklin was starting to beat the drum to the Admiralty saying, where's my husband? You know, can you send out some rescue expeditions or something? And they made several rescue expeditions, and this went from 1848 onwards. The native people of the area, the Inuit of the area, their stories were that everyone had died. And some of the British, the Admiralty, they didn't want to believe that. So, you know, they kept sending in rescue expeditions. Now, fast forwarding to today, the ships were actually found in 2014, 2016, and if it's a nice day, you can actually look down and you can actually see one of the wrecks. And they were here near King William Island. The Terror was found in the coincidentally named Terror Bay, complete coincidence, and then the other one was found near it, but not in a bay of the same name. So this was still, the Franklin expedition is still something that captures the public imagination today, let alone then. So there are many books that are written about the Franklin expedition, the Buried in Ice and the Erebus and Terror expedition. There was even a TV series just a few years ago called The Terror, which in some ways I liked it because they really worked to get the details right down to the shape of the buttons. But then they had a monster come in that was chasing the crew. Why do you need a monster? So anyway, so there were many rescue expeditions, and they went, these are kind of the years of these different rescue expeditions. And if we look, there was an expedition, second line there, 1850 to 1855, led by Richard Collinson. He was aboard a ship, the HMS Enterprise, which was out on a 5-year mission. Just saying. Okay. There were many enterprises, many enterprises. So if we go back to this and the coordinates, was there really a relationship between the Encrypted ad and the Franklin expedition or one of the other rescue expeditions? So, solution of the time series. So 1880, the Times published their ad. 1992, when he finally had free time, a man named John Rapson figured out the code in the ads, and he published the plain text in the Cryptologia journal. Cryptologia is an academic journal that publishes papers about historical encryption. And here's how he did it, and again, you got some guesswork going on here. So he analyzed the ciphertext. He saw there were many 4-letter groups and 3-letter groups. Letters were only from G to Q, excluding J. The capital letters were B through F, and also some S's. And there was some clear text, such as the latitude and longitude. Okay, so was this based on a code book? Well, what's the best way to break the code book code? Find the code book, if you can. In this case, this was not the code book, but many ciphertexts have been solved this way. And is there a code book group that uses 4-letter groups based on G to Q? No. But there is a code book that uses 4 number groups. So you have groups of 4 numbers. And this was introduced in 1817, and this was the naval code book that was used. Okay. And so you have the flags, each one represents a number. So made a jump, made a theory here. Of those 4-letter groups, let's say they're numbered 0 through 9. So G is a 0, H is a 1 so far, skip the J. And go through and then apply the code. Didn't work. Okay, so what else can we do? We can try, maybe this was the wrong table in terms of the letters and numbers. So then Rapson looked for cribs. So he went through the code and he saw that there was a section that said IQHL born. So born was in clear text, IQHL was in ciphertext. Could IQHL mean son born or daughter born? So he went through the code books until he found the word son. In this case, the son was 8196. So IQHL maybe to 8196, and made a new table from there. And then he found another place, looking for another crib, and where you had that 3 MIOQ, maybe MIOQ meant month, so third of the month, maybe. All right, so if MIOQ goes to 5831 and made another table, these are looking pretty close. You splice them together, and you also get something that starts with 0 though, and then goes through 9 down to 1. And if you take that table and apply that to the code, you get a plain text. All right. So also something is those capital letters. You had to go through, and they referred to different parts of the code book at the top right of the page. So E in this case meant part 4, and you can see, and I've got 2 of the code books down here if anyone wants to look, and part 4, and then that code that was released by the Times in 1980 with the latitude and longitude. Using that, Here's the plain text. All are well at Bolden. Julia in something home. Fanny Auckland, New Zealand. Louise Houghton Liskane and Margaret's family. Henry all at Bolden. Bernard Bolden waiting for others. Panama. Aunt Baker, recovering grandly. Families meeting 50th married day. We assume that meant anniversary. Scarlet fever abating. And then some words we didn't understand. Sailed Isabella boat 14th March. Patrick, K-T, we're pretty sure that means Kellett now. Well prepared. Eastern exhibition. It will be sufficient. Sometime in April. Surgeon Ray returning. Been accurately, and then latitude, longitude. Seen drifts. Easy. I have not had tidings of investigator J to W. So you can see there's still a lot of guesswork that we need as we're going through the code. And who's J to W? Now we know who it is. It's Julia Winton, who's Collinson's sister. He had several sisters, right? And so when we massage it a little more, removing the decay T and kind of adding this and that, and then we can actually get a plain text. Understanding that these things have to be manually massaged. And when I did one of these, it took me about 2 hours to kind of compare that. Now I'm pretty good. Now I can look at one and go, oh, this means his third sister and the one that got married. When we first did it, it was really slow going. Like population, did it mean, it was just pop in the code book. So did that mean population? Did it mean popularity? Didn't know. P and M, never better. Now we know that means Papa and Mama, Pater and Mater. And Coleridge, the words that we got out of the code book were coal and ridge. So I assume now that it means Coleridge, but it's still a guess. And this is another one. This one refers to two ship captains, Captain Penny and Austin, who we know were also involved with the rescue expeditions. And then family, we've got Emily, Sophia, and Thomasine, who were all sisters. Okay. And Hawk, Mr. Hawk, was a factory owner at the time. So, who was the receiver of these messages? 1850 to 1855, Richard Collinson was the receiver. Okay. So we're going to talk now about the Collinson expedition. So it was one of the many Franklin rescue expeditions, 1850 to 1855. Also, an interesting note is that it was launched by the British Admiralty, Admiral Beaufort. And anyone who knows about codes knows that there's a Beaufort cipher. And this is the individual that came up with the Beaufort cipher. Now, the expedition didn't have any luck in finding the Franklin expedition, but they were trying to come at it from the western side. So they left England, went around South America, came in. Every so often they would come out and like spend the winter in Hong Kong or something, and then after a few years they finally went home. So after 5 years, they came back. And after Collinson died, his brother took all of his logbooks and wrote a book using his logs. And that book you can find all over the place. The Voyage of the HMS Enterprise, Arctic Hellship, the Journal of the Enterprise. If you go to the British Museum, you can find them selling different copies. There are copies in schools, because he was a really good writer. And these books really sound like an adventure novel about fighting through the ice. And on one of the pages in this book, it does say, cipher notices in the Times. And that they used a signal book of the Royal Navy, and there was an advertisement in this cipher was regularly inserted into the Times. So here we have connection from both sides that there was this code book, and it was connected to Collinson. So the mystery about the purpose of the messages was solved. And we call this the first known secure global communication system. And let's see. And so the Times was available in every major port in the world. And the theory was that wherever Collinson put into port, he would be able to find copies of the Times and therefore would be able to find an encrypted message from his family. However, did it work? Well, not so great. Only in 1855, on his way back, he got access to the Times in this town that is spelled in a dozen different ways, but I'm going to say Bangladesh today, Indonesia. So it was on his way out there. There's a little strait past Banyuwangi, right? And Banyuwangi is also said in his journal. And I am thrilled by this. I did research at the Royal Museums, Greenwich, when I was in London a couple months ago, and I actually found the logbook that Collinson had, and it said 2 p.m. anchored 4 miles north of Banjowangi. But I was thrilled to find, like, my hands were trembling when I was holding it. So this is a picture of probably of what Banyuwangi sort of looked like at the time, but this is from 1876 when they were placing an undersea cable that was connecting there. And at that area, Collinson was able to get 4 of the messages in Banyuwangi. So the decryption project. At the beginning of 2024, this year, we know that the encryption had been broken. Not very many ads had been decrypted yet, and no scholar had actually read all of the messages. So I started with the American Cryptogram Association and with Klaus, my co-author, and we were joined by Taylor Leach, brilliant game developer who was just very interested in the whole topic. And we had several Zoom calls, and our goal was to decrypt all 50 of the Collinson ads and research the background. So not just it's decrypted, but what does it say? How is it all connected? So we made a list of all the messages, and Taylor wrote a decryption tool in JavaScript. So this was client-side JavaScript. And you can see this at agony.news is the URL that he came up with. And it uses it makes a code table created from the code book. It does some OCR with manual cleaning, which is really, really tricky. And it includes a section to ignore the clear text most of the time. Like in many of the messages, it's got in or at. And we've done that for all 50 messages, and now we're going through and doing manual cleanup on all of them. So we have this page, we use Google spreadsheets, and on the left column we have the ciphertext, and on the right there, let's see, on this one we have what his OCR thing has done, and then in the middle, after some manual cleanup, this is what we have. Right. So the messages tend to be signed J to W, who we know is Julia DeWinton, because we actually found an article from the time period saying, Julia, if you've seen these odd encrypted ads in the Times and wondered what they are, well, Julia DeWinton has been writing these. And that's about all it says. It doesn't say who she's sending them to, but it just says J to W is Julia DeWinton, because apparently they were a very high-class family. AC, we're not entirely sure who's that. Julia went on to write several novels. And Collinson, if you look at the ad on the right, you can see that these ads, once decrypted, used a lot of proper names. You would see, let's see in this one, Emily, Sophia, Bernard, Fanny, George, Julia. And in many of the ads, what they were trying to do is tell Collinson, here's how each of your 10 sisters and 4 brothers are doing. So they were trying to cram it all into this small ad. Also, there were letters that were being sent. And Klaus and Taylor and I have all been at the Royal Museum's Greenwich. There's this thing out front of it, which is like a ship in a bottle. And there we have also found letters from Collinson's relatives, Sophia and Amelia to Collinson. There's other places, like we haven't found any of his letters. They've got to be somewhere, but we haven't found any yet. And this is a letter. They were very vague as to how they addressed it. So they would just say, somewhere near the North Pole. Okay. Or this one says Hong Kong. Hong Kong. Okay. And this one is Arctic Expedition, Pacific. Sorry, did I hear a question over there? No? Okay. All right. So we know that they were sending the newspaper ads and also the letters. The letters, to save space, sometimes they would write horizontally on the letter, and then they would turn it 90 degrees, and they would continue writing on it. So you could use this one page to get 2 pages of information, but it makes them very difficult to read. So what did the ads say? Well, they referred to a lot of places, and we're tracking down. The siblings moved all over the place. We also find, like, when we said Auckland, New Zealand in a previous ad, it didn't mean Auckland, New Zealand. We found that there is a town named Auckland in northeastern England. So we have to do that as well with the manual cleanup, is figure out which town is being referred to. Also, of course, there's many areas that are referred to in the islands that are north of Canada. And there's these references to these things of the windows in the church. And we found that the Winton family was sponsoring new stained glass windows in a local church. So it was really cool to find pictures of those windows. We'd like to get pictures of the churches themselves, but haven't managed that. Here's something else we found. On the left it says small chancel window as it was, and on the right small chancel window as it is. So they were very proud of what they were doing with the church windows. And this is another one where you can see the old windows on the right and the new windows on the left. And also there was big news in the area. So this ad referred to the Queen was opening Newcastle Station, late in August. And we found a picture of Newcastle Station, which was opened by Queen Victoria on August 29th in 1850. And then we heard that Bernard, this was Collinson's brother, had been made engineer to the Great Expedition. The Great Exhibition was effectively an early World's Fair, and Collinson's brother was put in as one of the chief engineers, if not the chief engineer. Right. So we still have a lot of open questions that we're researching, like how did the Times get delivered to these different locations? How did Collinson find the Times? Was it just in little shops, or was there like an area for British visitors where they kept copies of the Times? There's this word called Frederickshaven that keeps showing up over and over, and we can't figure out, is this a person or a ship or a town? I mean, there is a town named Frederickshaven, but it's far, far away up north of Denmark. And were there newspapers about the grand opening of the church once the new windows were in? And also how many errors were found in the ads. So in one of the ads I was working on, it said, all are well at Hook. Sophie is going to Hook. And I was like, what the heck is Hook? And then I realized that there was a typo where one digit was wrong, and Hook actually meant home. So it all is well at home. Sophie and Amelia are going to home. And to show some of the other questions that we're coming up with, let's see, there we go. This is the Google spreadsheet that we're using. And there are things that we want to find pictures of to be used in our Cryptologia article. And every time we decrypt an ad, we have a list of questions on there. Like if it says fishery families, what does fishery families mean? So I can show you in this spreadsheet. We made a different tab for each one of the different dates. So the way it would work is we would have a picture of the ad, and we would have the plain text of the ad. We would have several people checking to make sure we have the correct plain text. And let's see, and then Taylor would run his JavaScript, which would look like this. And it would make a good guess, you know, coming, winters, wintered, wintering. And now I can pretty much just read this, but initially it was pretty tricky, and you'd really have to think about what was meant in these different contexts. So in this context, it might have meant all are well at Bolden and elsewhere, Margaret and Tom coming to Roker for the winter, Harriet and something time, we'll spend time at home after 3 months, and then absence the baker. And so you'd really, it wasn't complete sentences. Yes?
We can't see it.
It's not showing, is it? Okay, so Steve, why is this not showing?
Oh, my fault?
I'm trying to show them the Google spreadsheet.
Oh, drag it over to your longer.
Hey, there we go. So this is what it would look like after we're doing the spreadsheet. Okay? All right. Walking away. All right. So if anyone wants to help with any of the research questions, we would be delighted. So, conclusion. The Collinson's family sent messages to him during his journey via encrypted ads, and they also sent letters. The deciphering is done at this point. Now we are trying to manually review everything that was decrypted and come up with something that is human legible. We're about 80% of the way through that. And then we're going to look at all of these ads and figure out all the research questions. If there's something where it says fishery families, what does that mean? And come up with something coherent. And then we're going to publish a paper of what we think we're at by the end of the year. And it will say, it won't be complete. It'll say, here's where we're at. This is what we found. We are putting this information out into the world. And probably we'll do another paper later on at some point. But lots to do yet. We're also taking a look at those letters that were written by his sisters, and we want to find the letters that were written by Collinson. There's many references to them, like we received the letters that you wrote from Sandwich Islands, meaning we received the letters that you wrote from Hawaii. And where are those letters now? We don't know. So there is something called the Cambridge Polar Institute, and I was talking with someone else about this, about how I love libraries, but not everything in libraries is digitized at this point. So sometimes you just have to go and look and go through the stacks. So I want to find these letters. I don't think they're digitized yet. And if you want to help will be greatly appreciated. You can contact me, elonka@gmail.com, or on Twitter. Yeah, I'm at Elonka Dunin, sorry, X. I'm Elonka Dunin on X. And that's it. Any questions? Then thank you.